Her plate was untouched. Salmon, roasted squash, her favorite, still steaming under the low light of our kitchen. I had set the table, lit the stupid vanilla candle she liked, even folded the napkin into a triangle like she used to do when we first moved in. And the chair across from me? Empty. 37 minutes past 7. That's when I heard the front door open. Heels. Not hers. Too sharp. Too deliberate. She was trying to make an entrance. "Sorry, babe," she said as she strolled in, tossing her bag onto the counter without looking at me. Lost track of time. She didn't smell like vanilla lotion. She smelled like leather and cheap whiskey. I asked, "Where were you?" She popped open the fridge, pulled out a sparkling water like this was a normal Tuesday night. "Out. Just drinks. With a friend." I said nothing. My fork scraped the plate. Her squash had already gone cold. Then she laughed. That short, sharp laugh that made my teeth hurt. "Don't look at me like that. You're always so sensitive. It's exhausting." I still didn't speak. She finally looked at me, leaning against the fridge. "It was a guy, okay? He's in my yoga class. Calm down. Don't be jealous." She smirked. That crooked smirk she used to save for private jokes between us. Now it was a weapon. That's when I said it. Quiet, but deliberate. "You left your earrings in his car." Her face changed instantly. Blood drained. Eyes wide. Arms stiff. "You what?" I checked the driveway. "Your earrings weren't in your gym bag. They weren't in the bathroom. And you don't wear that perfume to yoga." Silence. For once, she didn't have a comeback. No sarcasm. No rolled eyes. Just breathing. Shallow. She didn't know I had followed her last week. She didn't know I saw them outside that wine bar, him brushing her hair behind her ear like it was his to touch. I didn't explode. I didn't cry. I just let her marinate in that silence she used to love. Because tonight wasn't the betrayal. Tonight was the confirmation. And it was only the beginning. She stood there like she was trying to figure out which lie would hurt the least. I watched her, calm on the outside, but my fingers were digging into the underside of the chair so hard I thought I'd break the wood. She opened her mouth once, then closed it. That was a first. Emery always had something to say. She could spin an excuse faster than I could finish a sentence. But right then, it was like her words had turned to dust. I don't know what you think you saw," she finally managed, her voice barely louder than the hum of the fridge. "You're making assumptions again." I didn't blink. "You told him you liked the way he made you feel seen." That one landed like a brick. Her pupils shrank. She inhaled sharply through her nose like someone about to be sick. She knew then. She knew I'd been there. Maybe not that night, but a night. Somewhere. Long enough to hear things I wasn't supposed to. "You followed me?" she asked, her voice low, angry now, but also scared. Good. I wanted her scared. I stood up slowly, pushing the chair back without rushing. Walked to the sink. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being deliberate. And for once, she couldn't steamroll me with jokes or gaslight me into apologizing for being upset. "You've been gone 3 nights this week," I said, keeping my voice even. "You changed your passcode 2 weeks ago. You stopped wearing your ring. You started hiding your toothbrush in your purse. You think I'm an idiot?" She was trembling now, but trying to hide it. Her hands moved to her hips, classic defensive stance, chin up like she was ready to spar. But she was off balance. She knew it. "You should have talked to me," she hissed. "Instead of spying. That's pathetic." I turned around. "So is pretending you still loved me." That shut her up. I wish I could say I felt powerful in that moment. Like some victorious husband who finally stood up for himself. But I didn't. I felt hollow. Weak. Tired. All those late nights I stayed up wondering if I was just paranoid. Turns out I wasn't. I was just stupidly hopeful. And then she did something that knocked the air out of me. She started crying. But not the kind of crying that makes you feel sympathy. No. It was the cry of someone who just realized they weren't in control anymore. A selfish, frustrated, caught red-handed kind of cry. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. So it was true. I didn't even need more words. That one sentence told me everything. I nodded. "How far did it go exactly? Should I get tested?" Her eyes snapped up. "It's not like that." "No." I tilted my head. "Then tell me what it is like." She didn't. She couldn't. And in that moment, everything changed. Not just between us, but inside me. I felt this strange sense of clarity. Like a fog had lifted and underneath it was just this rotting truth I'd been pretending not to see. She wasn't sorry she cheated. She was sorry I found out. After she went to bed. Or at least pretended to. I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the two untouched plates like they were evidence in some crime scene. I didn't touch mine. I couldn't. The whole room smelled like her perfume, and it made me sick. Around midnight, I heard the familiar sound of her turning on the white noise machine in our bedroom. She always needed noise to sleep. Ironic, considering how much silence she'd forced between us lately. I waited another 20 minutes. Then I crept down the hall. Her laptop was on the couch. Still open, still glowing, and still warm. I hesitated. I'm not proud of what I did next, but let's not pretend this marriage was built on mutual respect anymore. She hadn't logged out of her email. That was her first mistake. Her second was thinking I wouldn't look. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe vague messages. Innocent flirtations. But what I found, it was worse. Way worse. Subject lines like, "Last night was perfect, and do you think he suspects?" made my stomach twist. One message had a photo attached, her in a dress I hadn't seen before, taking a mirror selfie in some unfamiliar hotel bathroom. The message said, "Don't worry, he thinks I'm at yoga again," smirking face. But the worst part wasn't the messages. It was the draft folder. There were unsent emails. One of them started with, "If things go the way I hope, I'll be free by Christmas." Free. That was the word she used. As if I were some cage. Some prison cell she needed to escape. I sat there staring at that line until the screen dimmed and the cursor blinked like it was daring me to move. I wanted to throw the laptop against the wall. Smash it. Wake her up and scream in her face. Demand answers. Demand some kind of remorse. But instead, I copied every single message to a USB I had lying in the junk drawer. Because I knew if I confronted her now, she'd cry again. And this time, maybe I'd forgive her. Again. And I couldn't afford that. Not now. I closed the laptop and stood in the dark for a long time, listening to the fake sound of ocean waves coming from our bedroom speaker. I thought about all the weekends I'd spent planning little getaways she wasn't in the mood for, all the back rubs, the groceries, the nights I stayed up late working just so she wouldn't have to stress about rent. She was planning her exit, and I'd been cleaning the bathtub for her the night she wrote that draft. I walked back to the kitchen, poured the wine she didn't drink, and sat with the glass in my hand until the sun started to rise. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just cheating. She was building a life without me. And the terrifying part? She was almost ready to walk away clean. The next morning, she made coffee like nothing happened. I watched her from the hallway, still in my t-shirt from the night before, my jaw clenched so tight it felt like my teeth would crack. She was humming. Actually humming. Some indie playlist she always used to blast when she was in a creative mood. The same playlist she made when she started that Etsy shop that lasted 6 weeks and cost us $2,000. I didn't say a word. Neither did she. She kissed me on the cheek, lightly, like someone you pass at a dinner party, then said, "I'll be at the co-working space most of the day. Might grab lunch with Kelsey." Kelsey, the decoy friend. I nodded. "Drive safe." She paused, caught off guard by my softness. That was the trick. She didn't expect me to be calm. She expected a tantrum. A confrontation. A scene. But I didn't give her one. Because I needed more time. That day, while she was out co-working, I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged into an old email. One I hadn't used since college. The password still worked. Buried in the archives were contacts, screenshots, a few old resumes, and one name that mattered, Evan Greaves. Evan was an old friend. We built websites together in undergrad. He was the smart one, the paranoid one. The guy who used VPNs before people knew what they were. We hadn't talked in almost 6 years. But I knew if anyone could help me disappear in plain sight, or at least gather the kind of data I wasn't smart enough to get myself, it was him. I sent a short message. Need eyes on a cheating spouse. No police. No drama. Just truth. You in? 2 hours later, he replied, "Of course I'm in. You okay?" I wasn't. But I didn't say that. We made a plan. Evan would monitor her socials, her locations, her emails. I gave him everything, including access to the iCloud account I'd quietly mirrored to an old iPad she didn't know I still had. And just like that, I became invisible in my own home. While she smiled and told stories over wine with Kelsey, I was seeing her real calendar events pop up. While she texted me selfies from a work brunch, I watched her airdrop photos to someone named Caleb in the Notes app. She wasn't careful. Not because she was stupid, but because she didn't see me as a threat anymore. I had become harmless in her eyes. The over-apologizing, overly sensitive husband who cried over burnt rice and shut down every time she raised her voice. I'd been easy to manipulate for years. But here's the thing about broken men, we pay attention. And for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was watching, and I was waiting. Because soon, I'd show her the one version of me she never imagined she'd have to face. The one she forgot existed. The funny thing about pretending everything's fine is that people want to believe you. Even the person lying to you. Especially them. It makes their guilt easier to live with if your eyes look soft and your smile doesn't twitch. So I smiled. When she told me Caleb moved away, and it was nothing serious, I smiled. When she asked if I wanted to take a weekend trip, as if a road trip could reset betrayal, I smiled. When she laid her head on my shoulder and asked if I'd been doing okay lately, I told her yes. That was the biggest lie I'd said to her face in years. But underneath that lie, I had already begun rearranging my life like furniture in a house I didn't plan to stay in. It started small. I moved my savings out of our joint account quietly. She never noticed. She hadn't checked in months. She assumed she had me wrapped too tight to worry. I also transferred the lease on our apartment to my name only. I told the landlord she was moving out next month. He didn't ask questions. I paid 2 months in advance. I changed the password on our Wi-Fi. She thought it was a glitch. I told her I'd look into it and never did. She tethered off her data plan for a week before giving up and going to the cafe more often, which worked perfectly for me. Less time at home meant fewer lies I had to fake my way through. But none of that compared to what I found in his messages. Evan was feeding me screenshots now. Real time. Caleb, the gym guy, wasn't just a fling. He was married. With a kid. And his wife had no clue, either. The irony stung. My wife had become the other woman in someone else's story. Worse, she was proud of it. She told him she'd never felt more alive. And that with me, she felt like she was sleeping in a house made of dust. She wrote that. A house made of dust. I copied that phrase into a folder I'd created on my phone. I labeled it, evidence for later. Because the truth is, I still didn't know what I was going to do. Not fully. I wasn't trying to destroy her. I wasn't some heartless sociopath waiting to pounce. I was a man standing on the edge of a cliff with no idea whether to jump or build wings. But I knew this much. If she ever looked at me and tried to spin this, tried to rewrite what she did, gaslight me into thinking I'd imagined it all, I'd be ready. Because behind my smile, I was building a mirror. One she'd have no choice but to look into. And when she did, she'd finally see herself the way I saw her. We had dinner with friends that Friday. Not friends, like people who knew what was going on. Just the usual couples we used to hang out with before everything started rotting from the inside out. Some of them still thought we were that sweet couple who made homemade pasta on weekends. That we took turns planning surprise dates. That we read books together at night. I used to wish they were right. Now I just hope no one looked too closely. She wore that same red dress again. The one from the hotel mirror selfie she'd sent to Caleb weeks ago. She didn't know I'd seen it. She didn't know I'd stared at that image for 20 straight minutes trying to understand who she was when she smiled like that, and why it wasn't ever for me anymore. You look beautiful, I told her before we left. She turned, surprised, then smiled. Thanks, Arlen. Not babe. Not Han. Not even the fake sweet names she used to throw around like candy. Just Arlen. Like I was a barista who got her order right. Dinner was at Nolan and Becca's place. Cozy house, good lighting, way too much wine. I brought a bottle of something I couldn't pronounce. She laughed a little too hard when I butchered the name. Still can't get through a wine label without sounding like a cartoon, she said to the group. Everyone chuckled. I smiled. I always smiled. But I saw it, the sideways glance Becca gave her. Just for a split second. She caught the edge in Emery's voice. The way she leaned away from me when I poured her glass. Something was off, and Becca wasn't stupid. Halfway through dinner, the conversation turned to marriage. Nolan joked that Becca kicked him to the couch for snoring. Harmless fun. Then Becca, glassy-eyed from Pinot Noir, said, "At least you guys still seem happy. I don't know how you do it. What's your secret?" I felt Emery stiffen beside me. I looked at Becca and smiled. Routine, I said. We stick to what works. Emery does yoga with her friend. I make dinner. We give each other space. Something flickered in her eyes. A quiet panic. A warning. Becca laughed. Wow. Space, huh? That's either very modern or very sad. It's both, I replied, sipping my wine. The table went silent for just a breath too long. Emery reached for my hand under the table. Not with affection, but control. A tight grip, like she was holding a grenade that might go off if she didn't keep it steady. "We've had ups and downs like everyone," she said quickly. "But Arlen's always been patient. He's good at seeing the best in people." That hurt more than if she'd said nothing. Because the subtext was obvious. I was a fool. The kind of man who believed loyalty would protect him from betrayal. The kind of man who still kissed her forehead at night after she came home late smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. After dinner, while the others moved to the living room for drinks and dessert, I stayed behind in the dining room and began collecting plates. Emery followed. "You think that was funny?" she whispered harshly, barely audible. "Dropping hints like that in front of our friends." "I didn't drop anything," I said. "You're the one who showed up in a dress he's already seen." Her mouth opened, closed. Her tongue pressed into her cheek like she wanted to spit venom but didn't know which poison to pick. "I told you that was over," she hissed. I leaned in close and whispered, "And I believed you. Just like I believed you were at yoga last Tuesday. And Sunday. And every other time you said you were finding yourself." She stepped back. For once, I didn't look away. I just stacked another plate on top of hers and walked into the kitchen. Let her boil in it. Let her feel the heat of a man who finally knew the difference between love and manipulation. Let her wonder how much I actually knew and how long I'd been building the story she was about to star in. The next morning, she made 2 cups of coffee. That used to be normal. It hadn't been for a while. She placed one mug on the counter next to me, but didn't speak. Just hovered for a second, pretending to scroll her phone, pretending not to glance up every other breath to see if I'd say something. Yell, break, cry, confront. Something. But I didn't. I simply took a sip and nodded. "Thanks." That single word unsettled her more than a full argument ever could. Because she couldn't read me anymore. And that terrified her. She tried to fill the silence. She always did when she wasn't in control. "I was thinking we could go to that cabin next weekend. The one up by Hillsborough? I know you always liked the lake." I blinked once. "That's still your idea of fixing this?" Her jaw tightened. "I'm trying." "No," I said, still staring into my coffee. "You're trying to bury it." She sighed, walked away. But I wasn't finished. "I canceled the cabin 2 days ago. You booked it under my name. You didn't think I'd check?" She froze near the hallway. Turned slowly. "Why would you cancel it?" "Because I already know what you were planning." Her lips parted slightly, not to speak, but because her breath caught. "You booked it for 2 nights, I said quietly, but only requested 1 key at check-in. The reservation email mentioned it. You also never sent it to me. You only printed it. Tucked it into your bag." "I didn't." "You did." I cut her off. "And you planned to call it a spontaneous surprise." For me. As if I was dumb enough not to notice the guest list included 2 steak dinners and a champagne bottle set for 2 at 9 p.m. Friday. She dropped the act. Like flipping a switch, her face hardened. The sweetness died. Her arms crossed. The lips she used to kiss me with curled back like knives. "What do you want, Arlen? Huh? You want to make me feel guilty forever? You want to play the victim till I collapse and beg?" "No," I said. "I want you to look me in the eye and admit that you don't regret cheating. You regret losing control of the story." That hit her like a slap. She didn't respond. Just stared, wide-eyed, with her throat moving like she was swallowing glass. For once, I didn't feel like the man begging for answers. I felt like the one giving her the chance to speak and watching her fail. Later that day, she tried to act normal again. Sent me a meme. Texted me about dinner. I responded with polite one-liners, nothing more. Emotionless. The kind of emptiness she never used to associate with me. Then I did something she absolutely didn't expect. I brought up divorce. Casually. Over lunch. Like I was suggesting Thai takeout instead of Italian. "I've been looking at apartments," I said between bites. "Just in case we want to file jointly and divide things cleanly." She choked. Literally. On a piece of her sandwich. "What?" I looked up slowly. "You said it was over. Between you and him. And yet, you've been more careful. More secretive. That tells me either it isn't over. Or it's over, and you're mourning it like a breakup instead of a mistake." "That's not fair." "No," I interrupted. "What's not fair is spending months figuring out whether I'm crazy or just being lied to by the person I built my life around." She stared at me, shaking her head. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. I leaned back, wiped my mouth, and looked her straight in the eyes. Because for the first time in years, I want you to feel the panic I lived in every time your phone buzzed and you smiled at it. She didn't say another word the rest of the meal. She just stared down at her food like it might turn into a bomb. And for once, I was the one watching her try to survive me. The night I moved out, she didn't cry. She didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't even ask where I was going. She just stood there in the hallway in one of my old t-shirts, the one with the faded print she used to say smelled like home, and watched me zip up the last bag. "You're really doing this?" she asked, her voice not angry, not wounded, just hollow. I nodded. No dramatic monologue. No guilt trip. No final fight. I'd already had all the conversations with her in my head months ago. All the imagined arguments, the fake apologies, the late-night confessions I used to beg the universe for. None of them ever came. And now, I didn't need them. "I thought you wanted to fix things," she added. "That's what you do, Arlen. You fix broken stuff?" I smiled, not bitter, not sarcastic. Just tired. "I do," I said. "But not people who don't want to be fixed. And definitely not at the cost of losing myself." She looked like she wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to say. Because I hadn't just found proof. I had found peace, a kind of quiet acceptance that comes when you stop needing someone's apology to move forward. I closed the door behind me without slamming it. The elevator ride down felt like floating. For the first time in years, I wasn't wondering who was texting her. I wasn't overthinking every sigh, every eye roll, every night she turned away in bed. I was just breathing. I stayed with Evan the first few weeks. His couch sucked, but his company didn't. We drank cheap beer and played old video games like we were back in college. He never asked for the full story, just handed me a controller and said, "You don't owe anyone anything anymore. Not even her." I eventually found a small apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No perfume I didn't recognize on the pillows. No unread messages in the draft folder. No pretending. And one night, months later, I looked around that space. Dishes in the sink, soft music in the background, an open notebook on the table with actual writing in it. And I felt something I hadn't in a long, long time. Peace. I didn't need to punish her. I didn't need to win. I just needed to remember who I was before I spent years trying to be enough for someone who already decided I wasn't. And now, I'm building something new. I'm not healed. Not completely. But I'm not angry anymore. And for a man like me, that's the real revenge.